Good evening, everyone, and thanks to Philamart and the Royal for organizing this series of webinars. This talk will probably last about 45 minutes, and we have 15 minutes for question answer, so it should be in reasonably good time. The word Zeppelin still carries a certain magic, a combination of nostalgia for a bygone era and marvel at the technological achievements of that time. Uh, a Zeppelin flew north of India during the world flight of 1929, but no airship service was established to India. Some Indian mails, however, did find their way on various airship and catapult flights, which is what we are going to talk about today. My own journey with Zeppelin cover started in 2011 when I bought my first Zeppelin cover. More importantly, at that time, young Markand Dave, who had sold me that cover, presented me with the 2003 Michel Zeppelin catalog. And I think it was the book more than the cover that got me hooked. And from that time, it's been a subject of very great interest to me. Just bear with me. This is a technical problem. I seem to be stuck. Uh, Pratisad, I'm not able to change to the next slide.
Okay.
So just hang on. I'm going to stop the share for a minute and try it one more time. There. Okay, so just in terms of scope of the talk today, what we are going to cover. But before that, some disclaimers. One is all references in the talk today are going to be contemporaneous. So my dear Mumbai will be referred to as Bombay. Karachi is still part of India during the period we are going to cover. So it's all in a very contemporaneous context. The information that I'm providing here, I think credit for that belongs to several experts who have published before and who have guided me in this project. Uh, there will be mistakes, those are entirely mine. And I'm assuming all the listeners are familiar with the fractional system of Indian currency that was prevalent at that time. So we had 12 pies to an anna and 16 annas to a rupee. So this is overall the background. Now with this in terms of scope of today's talk, we are going to cover mail that is addressed to India or mail that carries Indian adhesives and has been carried for at least part of its journey via Zeppelin, catapult flights, or on the R101 airship. So with this, we'll start with Zeppelin mail. So the word Zeppelin. Zeppelin is Count Ferdinand Adolf Heinrich August Graf von Zeppelin, born in 1838, died in 1917. He was a German general and later inventor of the Zeppelin rigid airships. And he founded the company Luftschiffbau Zeppelin. This company manufactured Zeppelin. It did not operate the service. So that's how the airship gets the name Zeppelin. What we will look at are some of the different Zeppelin airships that were there and carried mail with to or from with Indian franking, the routes they followed, some examples of Indian postage, what the postage rates were, some examples of mixed franking, the very interesting postmarks, cachets, etiquettes, onboard stamps, confirmation marks, some of the eastward routes. So this all was centered around Germany. So flights to the east of Germany, flights to the South Atlantic and connection with the Condor service, and some flights to the North Atlantic. So we go back to one of the very early airships, the LZ-10, the Schwaben. The company that operated the service was, and at that time was called DELAG, D-E-L-A-G. DELAG is the acronym for Deutsche Luftschifffahrt Aquitaine Gesellschaft, which is in German, in English it means the German Airship Transport Corporation. This was the world's first airline and used to use an aircraft for revenue service. It was founded in November 1909 and operated the airships manufactured by Luftschiffbau Zeppelin Corporation. Headquarters were in Frankfurt, Germany. So the Schwaben was one of the very early airships to carry a mail. So in 1912, in June, there was the Airmail Week in Rhino-Main. And this is an example of a postcard that is addressed to Bombay, which has the stamp of that Airmail Week. Now, this is cancelled 14 June 1912, and it's addressed to Sir Charles Stuart Wilson in Bombay. I'll come to him in a minute. The one thing to keep in mind is in this Airmail Week, they had this airship, the Schwaben, and they had an aircraft that was called Gelber Hund, the yellow dog. So because this postcard was not posted on board the Schwaben, it's difficult to say for sure whether it flew on the Zeppelin or whether it flew on the Gelber Hund. So it could be any one of those. The person it was addressed to is very interesting. You can see from the postcard itself, it's addressed to the Honorable Sir Charles Stuart Wilson, KCIE, India, Director of Post Office. That's it, that's his address. So who's this man? He was an official of the Indian Civil Service. He rose to become the Director General of Post and Telegraphs. He was a prominent philatelist, one of the founders and the first president of the Philatelic Society of India. He signed the roll of distinguished philatelists in the Royal Philatelic Society in 1921 and was the council member of the Royal Philatelic Society London from 1915 to 1939. He also edited the Philatelic Journal of India from 1898 to 1905. So definitely very closely associated with Indian philately, and it's always a pleasure to have something like this in the collection. We'll move on from here to the LZ-13, the Hansa. So it had two test flights in July 1912 and August 1912, and then the ship was taken over by DELAG for operations. So we have here a cover of the 1913 flight. This has a pair of 5 Fenning adhesives tied with the onboard postmark. So this postmark is very interesting. The postmark here, which you can see here, it says Luftpost Hansa. So this is what we call an onboard mark. This means that the postcard was actually posted by a passenger or by a crew member on board the airship when it was flying. So this is absolutely authentic proof for us that this particular postcard was carried on board. The postcard itself is an official DELAG postcard, and on the reverse is the view over the city of Berlin. It's addressed to Bombay and later redirected to Karwar, which is about 600 kilometers south of Bombay. We see the Aden Sea Post Office, 9th November, and we see the Bombay GPO delivery mark, 14th November, redirected and delivered in Karwar, 18th November. Moving now to perhaps the most successful Zeppelin, the LZ-127, the Graf Zeppelin. Now these airships were enormous. If you see the length of the Graf Zeppelin, 236 meters. Just to give you an idea, a football field is 105 meters long. So this was like more than 2 times the length of a football field, And this carried passengers in absolute luxury. They had bedrooms, they had a dining room, they had a smoking room, library. There was a very high quality cuisine and service. So when these Zeppelins flew the transatlantic, they absolutely carried their passengers in great luxury. A lot of the mail carried on Zeppelins was largely philatelic. There are examples of non-philatelic mail as well. So now this is the first North American flight of the Graf Zeppelin in 1928. It's an airmail postcard, canceled Flint, Michigan, October 28th. You can see here the Flint, Michigan postmark. Here it is. And it is sent on board the Graf Zeppelin from Lakehurst, New Jersey. This is where they started the flight to Friedrichshafen. And on the reverse, here we have the arrival at Friedrichshafen, which is 1st November 1928, and onward delivery to Bombay on 23rd November 28. You have this very attractive violet first flight cachet, which I have tried to reproduce here. Which shows the flight from the United States to Germany, on which this card was carried. This is the Orient flight of the LZ-127 in March of 1929. So this flew from Friedrichshafen to Ramallah and back to Friedrichshafen. The very interesting aspect of this is these would actually drop mail from place to place by either lowering wire baskets or from sometimes just putting it in a sack and dropping it down. In fact, this flight is very interesting, and a complete book has been written only on this flight. And one of the co-authors of this book was one Cyril Dayton. We know him more popularly as a writer of spy novels, Len Dayton, which I'm sure many of you would have read. So he was obviously a very fond philatelist who studied this flight. Now, what is interesting about this cover is it is again, posted on board the airship. You see the onboard postmark. You also see two airmail etiquettes. So the second airmail etiquette, which is in Arabic and in English, was applied in Egypt. This is the Egypt airmail label. And this actually flew on Imperial Airways. So what happened was that this was dropped at Ramallah, transported to Gaza, and then on the Imperial Airways flight from Croydon to Karachi, it was carried from Gaza to Basra and then delivered to Karachi. And there was an arrival stamp on the reverse. 15th April was the Karachi arrival. This is the round-the-world flight of the Graf Zeppelin, which was in 1929. And it started in Lakehurst in New York State and went from there to Friedrichshafen, on to Tokyo, from Tokyo across the Pacific to Los Angeles, and from there back to Lakehurst to complete the round-the-world journey. This cover itself flew from Lakehurst to Friedrichshafen to Tokyo, and from Tokyo, and we can see the superscription here, by Graf Zeppelin from Lakehurst via Tokyo, Japan to Bombay. And we have an arrival stamp in Bombay, 16th September 1929. This cover is addressed to Sir David Ezra, care of David Victor David, Bombay. Now, Sir David Ezra lived in Calcutta with his wife Rachel. Both of them were very avid philatelists. He was the patron of the Indian Airmail Society, where Stephen Smith was the secretary. And Ezra's, in fact, they had the first aerophilately exhibition in 1930 at their home in Calcutta. Their home, I mean, they were very wealthy people. They had a complete zoo in their house and huge gardens and things like that. Rachel Ezra was actually the aerophilatelist of the two, and she maintained a very extensive collection, took very extensive notes of all her items. and she was a girl who grew up in Bombay. She was from the Sassoon family. Sir David Sassoon, her ancestor, uh, was a Baghdadi Jew who settled in Bombay, and they went on to become so wealthy that they were known as the Oppenheimers of the East. And it was believed that not a single ship would go in and out of Bombay harbor without some cargo belonging to the Sassoons. So Rachel Sassoon married Sir David Ezra and went on to build a very high quality philatelic exhibit collection, take very extensive notes. A lot of that material is available today in the hands of private collectors, and her notes give us a very interesting contemporaneous account of the development of Indian airmails at that time. Uh, this is a cover of the 1931 Egypt flight. In fact, yesterday in one of the WhatsApp groups, I think it was India Study Circle, somebody had posted another cover and wanted to know more about this Egypt flight. So here is the cover, deciphered for all of you. So this is franked with the two Reichsmark Zeppelin stamp. It is cancelled at Friedrichshafen. So this was not posted on board the Zeppelin. It was posted at the post office, which loaded the mail onto the Zeppelin. It's addressed to Krishnagiri. So 9th April is when it was posted in Friedrichshafen. It has a Cairo arrival stamp. And again, the Cairo arrival, it says Cairo Graf Zeppelin, 11th April 1931. Once it was reached there, then it went on to Port Said and by surface came to Bombay and went on to Krishnagiri, again, which is in south of India, and delivered on 28th April 1931. This cover is now the Graf Zeppelin's transatlantic flight. So this is the South Atlantic flights, the fourth South Atlantic flight of 1933 from Friedrichshafen to Pernambuco between 5th to 8th August 1933. So this cover was mailed in Karachi. We have a Karachi registration 24th July cover, and it then went on to London. So you can see here British franking cancelled at London. This is a 10 pence franking, and I'll come to that in just a minute. But just to complete the journey, it then went on to Berlin by air, and from Berlin it got loaded onto the airship, and then went on the flight from Friedrichshafen to Pernambuco. So now the interesting thing is, prior to 1934, mail that was carried on Zeppelin was only accepted from participating nations. So it was only those countries to which the airship flew, or treaty nations, nations which had a treaty with the German Postal Department. India was not a participating nation, nor was India a treaty nation. But mail from India is known to have been carried on Zeppelin flights. So here is an example. So British mail, Britain was a treaty nation. So here we see this letter went to London. The 10 pence franking was, so the letter is franked 9 anna 9 pies in Indian franking. 9 pies is the printed matter rate. 3 annas is the surface letter rate. 6 anna is the airmail rate to Europe. So the Indian franking was good enough to get this letter to Europe. 10 pence is the airmail franking, which was valid on Zeppelin to cover from Germany, from Britain via Germany to South America. So this is how it worked. This in 1934, the situation changed. From 1934 onwards, mail was accepted on Zeppelin on any country which was part of UPU and had a published airmail rate to South America. The mail could be carried on Zeppelin. Now, here we have a cover, the same flight, the same South Atlantic flight, the fourth flight of 1933. But this cover is mailed from Mahe, which was a French colony at that time. So this cover has one Fanon, one cash, and another 40 cash French India franking, and it has 9 annas Indian franking. So the 9 annas Indian franking is basically the 3 anna letter rate and the 6 anna, sorry, is the 9 anna airmail rate. The French franking will take care of the surface letter rate. So this is the theory about how this letter made it to.
Hello.
Hello.
I think some network issues. Please bear
Hmm.
for 2 minutes.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're back, sir.
Okay. So I'm just, how do I the screen? Give me a minute. Okay. So Pratisad, is this all good?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So this was the first flight cover which flew from Bombay. This is probably what I have seen to be the most common and easily available Zeppelin cover addressed to India. My guess is a quantity of 50 to 100 covers were flown on this flight, and all of them addressed to the same Mr. Dawar in Bombay. So this is relatively easy to get. Again, it has the first flight cachet. It has the New York May 11th cancellation, and then it in Frankfurt on 14th May, and finally reaching Bombay on 19th May. Oh God, this is not moving again. Sorry, you'll have to bear with me for just a minute again. Yeah, so Pratisad, are we good?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we now come to a very, very interesting cover. In fact, I had written a small article on this that was published in the India Post just early in 2020. So this cover is the first round the world airmail attempt in 1937. So this was intended on the third 1937 westward flight of the Hindenburg 129. Around the world in 1937 by airmail, it was not possible at the start of the year because there was a small gap in the worldwide airmail network. Imperial Airways was flying from Europe via Middle East to Australia. And they had also introduced a feeder service linking Malaysia with Hong Kong. Pan Am was flying from San Francisco via Hawaii only as far as Manila. But there was no air service between Manila and Hong Kong. So this was the gap which made round the world airmail not possible. So until April 1937, airmail from US to India was routed only via Europe with airmail service from Amsterdam to India. This service was subject to the airmail fee of 22 cents per half ounce. If they wanted to have additional transatlantic airmail service on the Hindenburg, an extra 40 cents was to be paid, making the total postage 62 cents. In early 1937, Pan Am worked out plans to extend their trans-Pacific service from Manila to Hong Kong. And they said that we will start this service with the 21st April departure from San Francisco. In March 37, the US Postal Service announced a 70-cent airmail rate per half ounce for US airmail flown by Pan Am via Pacific to Hong Kong, onward by Imperial Airways to India. So now there was a 70-cent airmail rate for airmail from the US all the way to India across the Pacific entirely by air. The first flight carrying such mail was the April 21st, 1937 Clipper departure from San Francisco. And it was the first scheduled extended Clipper flight to Hong Kong. So the sender of this cover paid the 70 cents rate and addressed the cover to Bombay. So here we see 70 cents US franking. Here we see the cover, Sydney Stout at care of Mr. Thornton, addressed to Bombay. The cover was dispatched from New Jersey on April 17th. It was flown by United Airlines Transcontinental to San Francisco. On April 21, April 21, the cover received the San Francisco transit postmark to mark the Clipper departure. It flew via Hawaii, Midway, Wake, Guam, Manila, Macau, and finally reached Hong Kong. And on 28th April, it received the Victoria Hong Kong transit arrival stamp there. 2 days later, on April 30th, the Imperial Airways feeder service took the cover from Hong Kong to Penang and arrived there on May 1st. On May 2nd, the Imperial Airways Australia-England service IW544 coming from Australia arrived at Penang. Cover was loaded and it went on westward and reached Calcutta on 3rd May 1937. The scheduled arrival was 3:45 p.m. So the 5:30 p.m. arrival postmark fits in very well. It then went on by surface transportation and arrived in Bombay in the morning of May 5th. And we have the delivery mark here, Bombay, 11 a.m. on May 5th. The Bombay addressee resent this, adding India postage of 9.5 anna. So here we see 2 anna into 4/8 anna and a 1.5 anna frank here. He added 9.5 anna franking, addressed the cover to Germany, so and sent it, posted it again. So this was on 6th May at 3 p.m. We have the Bombay GPO stamp of 6th May 3 p.m. here. On the 7th morning, it flew on Tata Airlines from Bombay, went to Karachi. The next morning on Imperial Airways, left Karachi on IW545. And it was Imperial Airways, again Australia to Croydon service. It arrived at Brindisi in Italy on May 11th. And according to flight reports, that was at 4:09 p.m. From Brindisi, the cover went by rail to Germany. It left Brindisi, the train went via Rome, Milan, Bâle, and finally got into Frankfurt on May 13th in the morning. Now the cover is addressed to the airship captain, and I'm taking a little time on this cover because this is an absolute, it's a philatelic gem, this piece, and it's a piece of history. And as I go through, you will understand why I refer to it as a piece of history. So it's addressed to Captain Max Pruss at the airship Hindenburg. So the address is the airship. There is no other address for this cover. And it was planned in such a way that he should dispatch it for the third time on the Hindenburg flight from Frankfurt to the US, which he was actually to captain. Now, this flight was scheduled for May 11th. The cover, therefore, would have been 2 days late because it reached Frankfurt only on the morning of 13th May. So 2 days late for the flight, and it would have missed the flight. However, on May 4th, it was announced that this flight would be postponed by 2 days with a new departure date on May 13th. The reason was that King George VI of England was coronated at Westminster Abbey in London on May 12th. And they wanted the airship to carry the films to show in the newsreels in the US cinemas. So they delayed the flight by 2 days. And this was, very, very fortunate because now the cover theoretically could have made it for the 8 p.m. May 13th departure. Now, everybody will wonder that this Mr. Sidney Stout, he planned everything so meticulously, so carefully, all the way from the US, Pacific, connecting in Hong Kong to Imperial Airways, Calcutta, Bombay. How could he make such a mistake of a 2-day delayed delivery of the cover? I think the answer lies in the complex postal rates operating in India. So at that time, there were actually 2 rates applicable for mail from India to Germany. So one was the 9.5 Anna rate, which is the franking that was done on this cover. And this required a superscription India-Italy. The cover would go, get deplaned at Brindisi, and then go by rail to Germany. There was another route, 11.5 Anna rate. The letter would be offloaded at Athens and immediately connect on Lufthansa and make it to Berlin in time for the 11th May scheduled departure. So, just for a mere 2 annas, this letter would have risked missing the return flight on 11th May and would have missed becoming the first cover to go around the world. However, all of this is history, and the reason for that I will come to in a minute. So the reason why I say this is all history is because on 6th May, when landing in North America, the Hindenburg crashed, it caught fire and exploded, and there was no return flight, and therefore there was no third flight. So because of this very, very unfortunate incident, the Hindenburg service stopped and the letter stayed on. So what you will see here is it came to Frankfurt on 13th May and ultimately reached destination in Red Bank, New Jersey on November 6th, 1937, after a gap of almost 6 months. The reason for that is this was addressed to Captain Max Pruss. He was the captain of the airship when it crashed. He suffered severe burns and he was admitted to hospital in New York, the Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, and he stayed in hospital for 4 months. So it was several months before he could return to his home in Germany, find this cover waiting for him, and then send it to the person it was intended to, this Mr. Sidney Stout in Red Bank, New Jersey. So this cover really is perhaps the only documented cover with Indian franking that has a connection with the crash of the Hindenburg, which has a connection with the coronation of King George, connection with the first round the world attempt, and the Pan Am flight extending from Manila all the way to Hong Kong. So it's certainly a very interesting cover for me. With this, I will move on to catapult flights. Again, very, very interesting service. In catapult, I'm going to talk about the transatlantic flights and also the ship-to-shore flights. So catapult is basically a mechanism that was fitted onto ships, which could allow aircraft, seaplanes, to be loaded on that and catapulted off board the ship. So they were launched at great speed. The reason for that was they could therefore carry a heavier payload. Um, if they had to take off from water, they needed to be a lot lighter. If they took off from a ship, they could be heavier. The problem was at that time, these aircraft did not have the range to fly across the Atlantic and therefore needed to stop for refueling on the way. So these services started in 1934 and started with the Dornier Walls. It then went on to the Super Wall and later to the D018s. And these aircrafts were, these were the catapult aircraft. What the German postal department did was they positioned these two ships, the Westfalen and the Schwabenland. These ships were positioned one off the coast of Africa and the other off the coast of South America to help this transatlantic carriage of mail between Europe and South America. They had an ingenious system called the Heinmat. The photograph you see at the bottom is the Heinmat. So the aircraft would land in the sea near the ship. It would taxi onto the mat, and then using a crane, they would actually lift this aircraft on the ship, refuel it, fit it onto the catapult, and launch it again for onward journey. So this was a very ingenious method they used to fly mail across the Atlantic, even when aircraft did not have the range to go across. So during this period, 1934 to 1936, this service operated in different ways. It operated for some time as an alternating service. So once a week, it would be a catapult service. The next week, it would be a Zeppelin service, and then catapult again. Then there was a system of pendulum flights. So, you know, the seaplanes would carry the mail up to Africa, load it on, it would be picked up by a basket, put on the Zeppelins, flown across the Atlantic, and then again delivered to seaplanes for onward journey. This is when the ships were being refitted and repaired. The pendulum flights operated. So it's a very, very interesting and ingenious system the German postal authorities and the German airship authorities had come up with. So here is an example of an interesting catapult mail flight cover. This cover is again very, very interesting because it was not intended to go on a catapult flight. It was intended to go on Zeppelin. Unfortunately, this is posted in Aden using Indian franking. Aden in 1935 was still under the Bombay Post Office. It was a sub post office under Bombay, and posted in Aden on 13th October, somehow had a very long journey and reached Berlin only on 30th October, and therefore missed the once in 2 week Zeppelin service on which it was intended to South America. The post office, since it was actually superscribed in pen, which is now actually overwritten by the sticker you see here, but underneath the sticker, it says that it says in French, pour dirigible Graf Zeppelin via London Overland. So it says it has to go by the airship Graf Zeppelin via London and Overland, but somehow the Zeppelin had gone. So what the German Postal Authority did was they put an airmail etiquette on top of it, and the next week was the catapult flight, they sent it on that. So this actually made it on the catapult flight from Germany and arrived in Pernambuco on 9th November, and on from there it was delivered. Addressed to Albert Thassler. Thassler was a mechanic on board the Zeppelin. The sender of this letter, Paul Gree, is famous. He has many Zeppelin mails sent by him at that time, lived in Switzerland. And he addressed this to Thassler because, you know, everybody didn't have an uncle in South America to address the letter to. So very often letters were addressed to passengers or crew members on board the airship Zeppelin. So this went on the catapult flight. Here is another example of a cover. This is now not philatelic mail. This is actually commercial mail that flew. This is a 1938 flight, and this cover is addressed to Buenos Aires. So there was a Condor service which was carrying airmails in South America, and the Condor service would pick up the mail in Brazil, in Pernambuco, in Recife from the incoming Zeppelin, and then it would fly via Condor. So this cover went to Argentina, to Buenos Aires on that flight. I realize I'm running out of time. I have just 5 more minutes, so I'm going to skip through quickly now. This is an example of ship-to-shore catapult. So this is another innovation at that time. So this cover was posted in New York on 18th June, addressed to Kalimpong in India. So it went on this German steamer, and it was on a Southampton arrival. So here, the Europa is the name of the ship. What this would do is one day before it would dock, while it was say about 150, 200 miles from coast, they would have a catapult aircraft carrying all the mails. So this gave a one-day advantage, and the mail could reach its destination one day earlier. So that is the reason why they had the ship-to-shore air services. So a lot of transatlantic steamers at that time had the provision to have a mail aircraft on them, which they would catapult off and send mail one day early to the destination on both sides of the Atlantic. So this is an example of that. With this, I will come to the last part of my presentation, the R-101 airship. From an Indian philatelic perspective, the R-101 is very directly relevant, because this was actually a service intended to fly into India. So the scheme was developed by the British. They wanted to connect the empire by airship. So Canada, Britain, they built a landing station in Ismailia in Egypt and Karachi to take the mail to India. There were thoughts at some stage they would even extend it to Australia. That, of course, got abandoned. So the R-101, 777 feet long, was developed in 1927. So there was a pair of airships. So this was built by the government. There was the R-100, which was built privately but funded by the government. So these two projects were going on simultaneously. They did a lot of trial flights and finally were ready to fly. This is perhaps the only time when mail was actually posted on board the R-101, a test flight on 23rd November 1929, almost a year before the actual flight took place. So the stationery here says His Majesty's Airship R-101. This was not a flight. So it was a very windy day. They had 100 MPs, members of parliament, who were invited. They got on the ship. The engines were started, letters were written, they were posted, they were served breakfast on the flight. But because it was so windy, it never took off. So after that, eating breakfast, posting their letters, they got off and the engines were shut down. So this is the test flight of November 1929, and the letter actually carried on board. The flight actually took off on 4th of October 1930. Lord Thomson, the Air Minister in the Labour government, and many of the leading airmen, air experts behind the project, they were all on board. And late night of on 4th October, it took off from England, Cardington. And very early in the morning of 5th October, there was terrible weather. It crashed into a hill at Beauvais in France. Terrible tragedy. 48 of the 54 people on board were killed. Among the passengers killed were Lord Thomson, the Air Minister, who had initiated the program, senior government official, almost all the designers of the airship from the Royal Airship Works. And this effectively ended the British airship development. It was one of the worst airship accidents of the 1930s. The loss of life was even more than the 36 killed in the Hindenburg disaster of 1937. And this also led to the scrapping of the sister airship, the R-100. So we see here the wreckage of the 101. We see here the bodies being, a common grave was prepared at Cardington, which is where the flight originated. The bodies were buried. And this is a memorial near the crash site that was put up for the victims. Now this is mail, you know, Jeffrey Brown in Indian Air Mail's records that at least two covers are known to be superscribed respectively by R101 and via airmail via R101. So I'm going to show you these two letters, very fortunate to have them in my collection. It is not known and cannot be said whether these were actually carried. The manifest actually lists mail, but it cannot be said for sure whether these were actually carried on the airship or they just went separately by airmail. But this is one of them, addressed to Kohat, Northwest Frontier Province in India. And here is the other one, which is addressed to Peshawar and, you know, later redirected to Baghdad. So these were the two covers, which we'll never know whether they flew on the 101 or not. This is the extensive preparations that were made at Karachi in India to welcome the R101. We see here this hangar. This hangar was an awesome piece of engineering, 859 feet long, almost the length of 3 football fields, 200 feet wide, 170 feet high. It was a part of a complex structure. So this is where the airship was to be hangared when it came at Karachi. What we see here, the building at the bottom is the hydrogen plant, which was to make the hydrogen to refuel. And it had enough gasometers to fill the 5.5 million cubic feet of gas it needed. This is the mooring mast, and below the mooring mast is an octagonal shaped building, which would be the passenger station for the airship. This is an aerial picture just to give you an idea of the size of this hangar. Look at this fuel tank. You see this little black circle here. You see the buildings here of the airport. This gives you an idea of the size of this hangar. The hangar itself was stayed on for many years after that. It was colloquially referred to in Karachi as Kala Chhapra. Kala means black, the roof was black in color, and Chhapra is shed, so this is the black shed. In 1952, finally it was decided to scrap it. It survived until the 1960s, when it was finally scrapped and the steel was used to make railway bridges and railway structures across Pakistan. So these are again some of the preparations which were made for the arrival of the R101. You know, the pass given for visitors to get onto the airfield, the motor car pass, letters of permission to go there. So it was all, you know, very exciting, very prepared. Unfortunately, the R101 never made it to Karachi. Otherwise, we would actually be able to welcome the airship in India. So this is the last cover I'm going to show. So this is a letter that was prepared and kept ready to be flown on the return flight of the R101 from Karachi. So it has the Royal Airship Base, 10th October 1933 cachet here, addressed to the Chief Aerodrome Officer, Croydon Airport. Unfortunately, the R101 never made it. There was no return flight, and it therefore went by the regular Imperial Airways service to England. So with this, I'm going to end my talk. For those of you who are interested, there's some very good published material. I would encourage you to invest in it and read. You have the Michel catalog. And don't worry about taking notes. It's all on my website. I'll give you the reference. You have the Frost catalog, which is again very helpful. There's a very good book by John Duggan and Jim Grow on the South American flights, the North Atlantic catapult flights again. And then I was telling you the book which was written by Blau and Dayton on the Orient flight of the 127. There's a R101 book, which is the sort of not about describing the accident, but describing the design and engineering that went into the airship. And of course, for anything to do with Indian Airmail, you know, we have Jeffrey Brown's Indian Airmail and postage rates, which are very important for anyone. He's got a very interesting section on Zeppelin in Indian Airmail. And then Pradeep Jain has listed some of his very, very good Zeppelin covers in his book, Indian Airmails as well. For a listing of all of these, you can go to my website, airindiacollector.com. There's a resources section, and that will take you to the page listing all this reference material. So with this, I would like to come to the end of my talk. I would encourage you to visit my website, indianairmails.com. I have displayed up there about 50 Zeppelin or catapult airship covers, which have an Indian connection there, tried to describe them. I'm also conducting a census of this. I've been able to record in excess of 100 covers. So if any of you have these in your collection or know people who have, please share. It would be a pleasure for me. So I'm now throwing it open to question answers.